Kemi Okoye gently smoothed the skirt of her simple but elegant dress as she stepped out of the gleaming black car. Tonight, she would attend the Lawson family gala, her first major public appearance as Derek's wife. Despite the swirling crowd of press and society elites, her heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and dread. Femi, her friendly cousin who served as her driver, looked at her in the rear-view mirror. "Madam," he said softly, "you do not have to prove anything to them. You know who you are." Kemi nodded and mustered a small smile. It was the first time she would meet Derek's parents, Chief Bartholomew Lawson and Lady Angela Lawson, in a grand setting. They had only met her once before, briefly, during a rushed formal introduction that felt more like a legal proceeding than a family gathering. As she entered the opulent ballroom, the chandeliers glistened overhead like waterfalls of light. The marble floors reflected the wealth and status that the Lawsons commanded. Even the slightest scuff of a high heel could be heard in the hush of high society chatter. Kemi tried to ignore the anxious flutter in her stomach. She had grown up in a small Nigerian village, raised by her grandmother, and nothing in her childhood hinted she would ever be in such a place. Derek, her husband, greeted her with a proud grin, taking her by the arm. She noticed his parents across the room, Chief Lawson in a bespoke suit, surrounded by an entourage of wealthy investors, and Lady Angela draped in a gown that screamed old money. The mother's gaze flickered toward Kemi disapprovingly. An invisible tension gripped the air. When Derek presented her, Chief Lawson's handshake was firm, but there was no warmth. Lady Angela barely touched Kemi's extended hand, as if it might sully her immaculate persona. Their expressions tightened in polite but disingenuous smiles. "You're late," Angela said icily, eyeing Kemi's dress. "I wasn't aware we were starting on village time." Kemi forced a kind smile. She did not retaliate. She'd learned the power of humility in the face of condescension. Derek looked between them, clearly uncomfortable, but said nothing. He was used to letting his parents rule the show. Kemi felt eyes watching her from every corner. She might have been the newest addition to the Lawson clan, but she was determined not to be its weakest link. As the night wore on, Kemi held her composure and displayed the grace she had cultivated over years of struggling for every ounce of respect. She could sense whisperings echoing in the corridors of old wealth. She might be quietly dressed, but her resolve was as solid as the glittering marble beneath her feet. What no one else knew, and what she never flaunted, was that she possessed far more power than any of them realized. She had come into this marriage with secrets and silent alliances, all of which would eventually rock the Lawson empire to its very core. Not long after the gala, the entire Lawson family retreated to their sprawling estate, a mansion that resembled a castle, complete with towering pillars, iron gates, and acres of well-trimmed gardens. Derek had arranged for Kemi to stay overnight, as it was more convenient than driving all the way back to their own home in the city. Late into the night, when the grand hall's echoes had faded, Kemi found a quiet corner of the library, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound books that likely were more decorative than read. She sensed movement across the corridor, a pair of silhouettes. Curious, she leaned forward just enough to hear. It was Lady Angela and Chief Lawson. Their voices were low, tinged with disdain. "You saw her," Angela hissed, her voice carrying a slight trembling rage. "She does not belong here." "She's not up to our standards," Chief Lawson confirmed. But Derek's infatuation blinds him. He wants to show how open-minded he can be, marrying some nobody from nowhere. Angela let out a dismissive scoff. "I heard rumors she grew up in a village, raised by an old woman. Possibly not even literate enough for our circles." Kemi felt a surge of anger tighten her throat but stayed hidden. She wanted to lash out, to defend her grandmother's honor, but she knew better. Spilling her emotions at that moment would solve nothing. Chief Lawson paused. "The board is already unsettled. The Lawsons have a legacy to maintain. Derek's marriage to someone of questionable background threatens our public image. She needs to be managed, or removed." Angela nodded sharply. "We shall handle her discreetly. Perhaps Derek will come to his senses when he sees that having her around jeopardizes his stake in our fortunes." Their voices trailed off, and soon there was silence. Kemi exhaled the breath she had been holding. Though her heart ached from hearing such harsh words, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She was used to underestimation, and in her experience, underestimation was often the perfect advantage. As she crept back to her guest bedroom, her hands shook slightly with adrenaline. She needed time to plan, to confirm her next steps. Let them whisper in their fancy halls, she thought. They would discover soon enough that not everyone cowers under scorn. A few nights later, Kemi sat at her modest home office, the only sound coming from the gentle hum of her laptop. Maya, her childhood friend and secret legal counsel, hovered beside her, scanning through old documents. A picture of their late mentor, a reclusive tech billionaire named Henry Grayfield, sat framed on the desk. Kemi clicked open a digital file labeled Grayfield Holdings. The light from the screen illuminated her serious expression. She recalled how Henry had taken her under his wing during her university years, recognizing her brilliance in engineering and software. He had been more than a mentor. He was like a father figure who saw in her the potential to change the world. After Henry's untimely passing, a series of legal documents surfaced, naming Kemi as the primary beneficiary of an array of tech patents and, more astonishingly, a controlling stake in Grayfield's network of companies. What few realized was that many of those companies silently powered the backbone of the Lawson empire. The Lawson conglomerate's logistics, data analysis, and even their shareholding structures relied on Grayfield's technologies. Maya, flipping through the dense legal language, broke the silence. We were right. Grayfield Tech holds the majority share in a shell corporation that is intricately connected to Lawson Global. You are, for all intents and purposes, their largest hidden shareholder. Kemi nodded, her eyes filled with both gratitude and determination. Henry believed in me when nobody else did. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted me to have the leverage to stand on my own. The significance of this legal web was monumental. If she chose to, Kemi could disrupt the entire Lawson empire. However, she had always preferred a low profile, not wishing to draw attention to herself, especially not the negative, predatory kind. Maya closed the folder. So, what's the plan, Kemi? Because sooner or later, the Lawson family will discover they're mocking someone who quite literally owns the ground beneath their feet. Kemi sighed, leaning back in her chair. For now, I remain quiet. I want to see if Derek is truly with me or just with me for appearances. I married him out of love, or at least I thought it was love. My greatest fear is that if he's not genuine, everything Henry worked for could end up in the wrong hands. Maya placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll handle it. Don't doubt your instincts. Henry chose you for a reason. Outside, the moon glowed in a tranquil sky, oblivious to the storm brewing within Kemi's heart. She would wait, watch, and measure the hearts around her before striking back with the rightful power entrusted to her. For now, she cherished the gift hidden away by her mentor, a quiet shield and an even quieter sword. The next weekend, Kemi accompanied Derek to a social event filled with his old university friends. The men wore expensive suits, guffawing and slapping each other's backs. The women, draped in designer gowns, flaunted diamond accessories like trophies. Kemi felt an immediate shift in atmosphere when she arrived. Eyes lingered on her, scanning her from head to toe. Derek, beaming with pride at the attention, introduced her to his closest buddies. One of them, a brash man named Tony, let out a loud laugh. So, Derek, rumor has it you found your wife in some, unconventional place? Another friend, Cole, added in a barely disguised sneer, We thought you'd marry a senator's daughter or some heiress. Didn't realize you'd pick a quiet girl from a less refined background. Kemi's face remained calm, but the words stung. She felt Derek stiffen. Instead of defending her, he forced a smile and shrugged. What can I say? Love is unpredictable. The group, apparently amused, continued their banter, making jokes about how Derek had married down. Kemi overheard them say she was lucky to snag a Lawson. When she caught Derek's eye, he looked briefly apologetic but didn't speak up. Later that evening, as they sipped cocktails near a balcony, Kemi confronted Derek with quiet disappointment in her gaze. Did you hear your friends? They're mocking me, and you said nothing. He shifted uncomfortably. Kemi, it's just how they joke. They don't mean any real harm. You have to understand this crowd. They're used to a certain type. She swallowed hard. That doesn't make it right. Don't I deserve at least the bare minimum of respect? He sighed. I'm sorry. I just don't want to make a scene. Kemi's jaw tensed, and she realized Derek cared more about maintaining appearances with his elite circle than defending the woman he claimed to love. A single tear threatened to escape her eye, but she blinked it away, vowing to remain composed. As the evening ended and she headed home, her mind spun with thoughts. Perhaps this was the first time Derek's loyalty was truly tested in public, and it was not a promising sign. Kemi's heart grew heavier, wondering if she was, in fact, married down by choosing someone who lacked the courage to stand by her side when it mattered the most. Kemi's nerves were on edge as she prepared for a high-level board dinner hosted by Derek's parents. The event was supposed to be a formal introduction to the Lawson executives, a chance for her to see firsthand how the family business operated at its highest levels. Despite her discomfort, Kemi maintained her poise and wore a well-tailored yet understated gown. When she and Derek arrived at the large private dining hall, the executives were already there. Men in suits and women in stylish business attire mingled, swirling wine in crystal glasses as they discussed profit margins and foreign investments. The table was set with silverware that seemed more expensive than the average car payment. Lady Angela scanned Kemi from head to toe as soon as she walked in, her lips pursed in mild disapproval. Then, in a tone loud enough for everyone to hear, she snapped her fingers and beckoned Kemi forward. "You there," Lady Angela said, pointing to her. "Could you be a darling and help the maids bring in the appetizers? We have some trays that need carrying." A hush spread across the room. Derek opened his mouth to protest, but found himself speechless. Kemi stood stock-still, her heart pounding. She forced a polite smile, recalling all the times she'd been underestimated. "Mother," Derek finally managed, "that's my wife you're talking to." Angela's eyes went wide, feigning surprise. "Oh, good heavens! I'm so sorry," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You blended in so quietly. I assumed you were part of the staff. My mistake." Kemi smiled sweetly. "I'm happy to help where I can." A few of the executives chuckled under their breath. Chief Lawson cleared his throat to shift the mood, and the conversation ambled on. Yet, Kemi caught the sidelong glances, the stifled whispers about how Derek's wife was almost invisible. So easy to dismiss she might as well be a maid. Throughout dinner, she contributed minimal small talk, choosing instead to quietly absorb the dynamics of the board members. She noticed subtle power plays, alliances, and cunning remarks passed back and forth. It was a well-rehearsed dance of influence, one Kemi had observed many times in the corporate world, but never under quite such a personal lens. By the end of the evening, her mind was racing with more than hurt. She was analyzing these powerful personalities as if they were pieces on a chessboard, mentally taking note of how each would react if she ever revealed her true position. In that moment, while Lady Angela gloated and Derek sank into the background, Kemi's resolve to keep her secret and play the long game solidified. The day would come when she would no longer be mistaken for the help. The next morning, Kemi met Maya at a downtown cafe. It was a modest place, far from the glitter of the Lawson social scene. They chose a quiet corner booth, away from prying eyes or curious ears. Maya wasted no time sliding a tablet across the table to Kemi. "I've combed through more documents. The Lawson board doesn't just want Derek out, they want to phase you out as well. But it's more complicated. They worry about a rumor that someone in the family might actually control more shares than they do. They have no idea it's you. They suspect Derek, or maybe a distant cousin. They're sniffing around." Kemi took a deep breath. "So, they're trying to remove Derek first to ensure he has minimal say. They must have noticed a shift in some stock holdings if they're suspecting an external force. But they haven't traced it to me yet, right?" "Not yet," Maya confirmed. "I've used corporate layers to hide your identity. So far, they're chasing ghosts. But Kemi, they are resourceful. And we both know the lengths some of them will go to. They'd prefer the fortunes stay in the family, even if it means sacrificing Derek. They assume you're an afterthought." Kemi stared at her untouched latte. "They haven't realized I'm not just a random wife. I'm the biggest shareholder, courtesy of Grayfield. Maya smirked. It's almost poetic justice. They have no idea that with a few signatures, you could overturn their entire board. For now, let them plan, let them conspire. But be ready. Kemi nodded, remembering the humiliations, the snide remarks, and the dismissive tones. None of them had any inkling that she was far from powerless. For a fleeting second, she felt a pang of sadness when she thought about Derek. She wanted to believe he genuinely loved her, not just her potential share in anything. But the more time passed, the more she worried he was no better than the rest, blind to her value as a person. Maya finished her coffee. We proceed as usual, quietly. We'll keep track of the board's moves. The moment they try something drastic, we counter. Understood. Understood, Kemi replied. Let them think they hold the reins. When the moment is right, we'll see who really pulls the strings. They shared a determined glance. Kemi had never asked for power, but now it was her duty to use it in the most strategic way possible. The less the Lawsons suspected, the closer she got to the moment of truth. A few days later, Kemi received an unexpected call from Chief Lawson's secretary. She was formally invited to a private family board meeting at Lawson Global headquarters. Normally, such a meeting involved only senior executives and direct blood relatives. Kemi's name on the list was nothing short of a shock. When she informed Derek, he seemed confused. I didn't know they were inviting you. They never do that for spouses, especially not for a meeting like this. Kemi studied his face. Are you sure you had no idea? He shook his head, seemingly genuine. I'm positive. But if they want you there, it might be a good sign. Maybe they're finally welcoming you into the fold. His optimism felt forced. Kemi couldn't ignore the anxiety in her stomach, a telltale sign that the invitation might be a trap. Nonetheless, she accepted. If they wanted to test her, she would step into the lion's den with her head held high. On the day of the meeting, she dressed in a crisp, tailored suit. Femi drove her to the towering Lawson Global building, a modern skyscraper with tinted glass and the Lawson name emblazoned at the top. He gave her a reassuring smile. Be strong, sister. We both know you have the upper hand. She pressed the button on the private elevator and ascended to the top floor. The hallway leading to the boardroom was lined with portraits of stern-faced men, Lawsons of generations past. Kemi could almost feel their judgment through the frames. Inside the boardroom, she found Chief Lawson, Lady Angela, Derek, and several senior executives. They had already taken their seats around a long, polished table. She tried to steady her nerves as she settled into an empty chair at the far end. Angela didn't bother hiding her scowl. Chief Lawson began with formalities, discussing company performances, expansions, and upcoming mergers. Kemi was asked no questions, given no voice. She was merely an observer, as the invitation had stated. Yet the tension in the air was palpable. She could sense the undercurrents, the unspoken alliances trying to gauge her reactions. Halfway through, an executive cleared his throat. We're also here to address a personal matter within the family. Lady Angela leaned forward, eyes fixed on Kemi. Yes. We want to ensure the Lawson family's reputation remains spotless. Derek's marriage has raised some questions. Kemi swallowed quietly. Derek avoided eye contact, and her heart sank. Was he in on this? Were they going to cast her as some unfortunate detour in the family's story? I understand, she said calmly, though her voice trembled slightly. Good, Chief Lawson said. We want to see how you handle yourself under pressure. If you're to be associated with this name, you must carry yourself impeccably. The rest of the meeting passed in a whirl of veiled accusations and subtle power plays. Kemi felt the stares drilling into her. She kept her responses short, aware that she was under a microscope. By the time it ended, she knew one thing for certain. This invitation was a clear warning. She was being watched, tested, and sized up. She was not part of the family in their eyes, merely a cog they might choose to remove at any moment. However, little did they realize that the smallest cog in a machine can become the most critical gear when the entire structure is built upon hidden foundations. 2 weeks later, another formal board gathering was called, this time an exclusive event at the Lawson private estate. Kemi was once again invited, labeled as an observer. She noticed an interesting shift in the seating arrangement. Instead of having a seat next to Derek, she found her chair placed at the far end, practically in the shadows. As soon as she settled, Lady Angela let out a laugh that echoed in the ornate room. "Oh dear, you can sit over there if you like. We wouldn't want you to feel too overwhelmed by business matters." Several executives snickered, as if on cue. Derek, seated near his father, looked conflicted but said nothing. Kemi felt her stomach knot. This was not a simple oversight, it was orchestrated to belittle her, to make her feel small. The meeting began, diving into expansions, profits, and new international partnerships. Champagne glasses were passed around. Kemi noticed how the conversation steered toward her background again. One executive leaned in, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I heard Kemi's from a tiny village. Must be quite the culture shock, She clenched her jaw, meeting his gaze. "Yes, it is, but not as shocking as I expected. Wealth is universal. So is cruelty." He blinked, momentarily taken aback, but quickly recovered with a dismissive sneer. They continued their quiet mockery, nudging each other, smiling in that condescending way that screamed, "You don't belong here." Halfway through, Lady Angela gestured for a servant to refill glasses. She turned her icy stare back to Kemi. "So, dear, do you have any goals besides being Derek's wife?" The group erupted in polite laughter, as though this were some sophisticated joke. Kemi inhaled slowly, reminding herself to keep her composure. "I have many goals, Lady Angela. Patience is just one of them." There was a silence as the group tried to decipher whether that was a subtle threat or a mild retort. Kemi's expression gave nothing away. The executives returned to sipping their champagne, thoroughly entertained by what they perceived as her helplessness. As the meeting adjourned, she walked out without waiting for Derek. She felt a surge of empowerment despite the insults. Mockery had a peculiar way of sharpening her resolve. While they toasted their arrogance, she was quietly preparing for a decisive move they would never see coming. Femi, Kemi's cousin and loyal ally, took his dual role seriously. On the surface, he was a mere driver for his cousin and her new husband. In reality, he was an intelligent, keen observer who knew how to navigate corporate backchannels. Late one night, he waited in the car while Derek attended a lavish gathering. But Femi was not just waiting. He was hacking into a public Wi-Fi network to check some leads. Kemi had asked him to follow up on a rumor about a potential scandal being brewed by the Lawson board. Scrolling through internal memos and hidden references, Femi stumbled upon a series of emails referencing Operation Clean Image. The content was cryptic but implied that Kemi was to be framed or discredited in some legal capacity. This would allow the Lawson family to persuade Derek to divorce her without financial repercussions. His eyes narrowed. The plan involved false accusations of marital misrepresentation, painting Kemi as a gold digger who had misled Derek. They even had a line item referencing forged evidence of secret debts in Kemi's name, designed to smear her reputation. Heart-pounding, Femi downloaded all he could onto an encrypted flash drive. He knew Kemi had suspected something like this might happen, but seeing the evidence spelled out in black and white was still shocking. When Derek finally returned to the car, tipsy and unaware, Femi quietly drove him home, all the while seething inside at how treacherous this family truly was. Later that night, he rushed to Kemi's apartment. He found her in her small study, reviewing documents with Maya. Without a word, he handed over the flash drive. Kemi's face hardened as she read through the data. "They're framing me," Kemi muttered, voice tinged with both anger and inevitability. She looked up at Femi. "Thank you." Maya, scanning over Kemi's shoulder, let out a low whistle. "This is so blatantly illegal it's almost comical. They're forging documents to trap you. And Derek, he's not even aware, or is he?" Kemi stared at the screen, a tightness forming in her chest. "We'll find out. But one thing is certain, they're pushing me into a corner. I won't let them destroy everything I've built. I'm not powerless." She ran her fingers over the flash drive, as though holding it gave her renewed strength. The storm was intensifying, but Kemi's calm fury was more potent than ever. They were about to learn the consequences of underestimating her, one quiet move at a time. That same week, Derek entered the living room looking agitated. Kemi had just ended a call with Maya when he confronted her. "I need to talk to you," he began, eyes darting nervously. "My parents, they've been in my ear about this marriage. They say it's becoming a liability for the family business." Kemi folded her arms. "And you believe them?" He scratched his head, refusing to meet her gaze. "They're telling me your background is stirring controversy, that it might hurt potential deals. I'm stuck in the middle, Kemi." She stepped closer, searching his eyes for sincerity. "You're my husband. Are you going to stand by me or not?" He hesitated, just long enough to answer her unspoken question. "They're offering me a payout, okay? They said if I separate from you, I can maintain my share of the family assets, and they'll let me expand my own ventures with their backing." Kemi's heart clenched. She had harbored hopes that Derek was simply a product of a spoiled upbringing, still capable of genuine loyalty. But hearing him speak so plainly of a payout hurt more than any of his mother's sneers. "So, is that all I am to you? A stepping stone to your inheritance?" Her voice trembled. Derek's gaze flickered with guilt. "No, it's not that. But this is my future. Our family's future. You have to understand how big this is." She shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "Our family? Clearly, I'm not part of your family. They're pushing you to cut me out. And you'd consider it." He reached for her arm, but she pulled away. His mouth moved silently as if trying to form words of reassurance, but nothing came. Kemi walked out to the balcony, her anger and sorrow mixing into a storm of emotion. She refused to look back at him. Alone under the night sky, she inhaled the cool air, steeling herself. The illusions of a loving marriage were crumbling. Derek's parents had manipulated him into thinking she was the obstacle. But she had far more power than they imagined. Inside, Derek stared at the closed balcony door, torn between loyalty to his family and the woman he once thought he loved. Neither he nor Kemi realized that the faint bonds still holding them together were about to snap entirely in the days to come. A crisp envelope arrived by special courier the following morning. Kemi recognized the crest, Lawson Global. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside were legal documents stating that the Lawson family intended to secure their business interests by ensuring Derek's marriage was not a financial threat. They demanded that Kemi sign off any future claims she might have to the Lawson fortune. In essence, it was an agreement that if Derek divorced her, she would forfeit any alimony or stake in Lawson assets. It was a preemptive strike, an outrageous demand that reeked of arrogance. Kemi took a photo of the documents and sent them to Maya, then calmly put them away. She returned to her daily routine, as though nothing had happened. But inside, she was seething. She had always expected some form of legal intimidation, but the audacity still stung. By the time evening rolled around, she had decided to confront Derek. To her surprise, he did not come home. A single text arrived, "I need space. I'm at my parents' place." The words only confirmed what she suspected. He was too much of a coward to face the storm brewing. She spent the night drafting her counter-strategy with Maya. They already had her controlling shares hidden in a maze of trusts and shell companies. Signing any transfer papers for the Lawson fortune meant nothing if Kemi actually held a hidden majority stake in the tech backbone that supported their empire. She could sign their documents 1,000 times, and it wouldn't change that fundamental reality. Still, the emotional toll weighed on her. She had not wanted a battle with Derek's family, but they were forcing her hand. This was no longer a question of if she would strike back, but when. At Maya's downtown law office, a sleek space filled with glass walls and minimalist furniture, Kemi and her friend spread out a series of documents across a large conference table. The plan was intricate. They would initiate a secret acquisition of additional Lawson shares through Grayfield's network, effectively granting Kemi an undeniable majority. Maya tapped a pen against the table. "We'll finalize the purchase next week. Once done, you'll have controlling interest in Lawson Global. After that, Any move they make can be overruled by you. The question is, do you want to reveal it immediately? Kemi looked pensive. Not yet. I want them to tip their hand fully. I want to see how far they'll go. But we need to set the pieces in place so when I do reveal it, there's no escape for them. Femi entered the office, having just completed some errands. There's more buzz around the board, he reported. They're saying Derek will stand with his parents. He's agreed to the divorce, as soon as they can legally corner you with fabricated evidence. Kemi's eyes narrowed. She swallowed the lump in her throat, refusing to cry. She had done enough mourning. Now was the time for action. Let them proceed. I won't warn Derek. If he's made his choice, so be it. Maya nodded, her expression fierce. And if they finalize the divorce, you'll still hold all the power. They won't see it coming. Exactly, Kemi replied, voice firm. I'll show them the consequences of underestimating me. They've mistaken quiet for weak. Let's prove them wrong. In that moment, Kemi felt less like a victim and more like a queen on a chessboard, carefully positioning her pieces. In her mind, she pictured Lady Angela, Chief Lawson, and the entire board falling like dominoes. This was not about revenge alone, it was about justice for every insult, every condescending remark, every attempt to belittle her. The day of reckoning was fast approaching. Despite the swirling chaos in her life, Kemi took a brief trip back to her grandmother's village, seeking solace and wisdom. The drive was long, the dusty roads a stark contrast to the polished city streets of the Lawsons world. Femi accompanied her, as always, but this time more as family than driver. When they arrived at the small compound, memories flooded back, her grandmother's gentle voice, the communal spirit of the villagers, and the simple joys she once knew. Kemi made her way to a tiny, humble hut near the edge of the village, where an old friend of her late mentor, Henry Grayfield, resided. An elderly woman named Mama Eno greeted her with a toothless smile. "My child," Mama Eno said, "I have heard you carry burdens." She led Kemi inside, offering her a wooden stool to sit on. Kemi confided in the woman about the corporate betrayal, her crumbling marriage, and the inheritance that weighed on her soul. Mama Eno listened intently, occasionally closing her eyes as if in prayer. "Henry told me about you before he passed," she finally said. "He said you had a heart of gold, but a spine of steel. He knew the day would come when you would stand before great forces that would underestimate you." Kemi's eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm afraid. Not of losing money, but of becoming like them, vengeful, cruel. Henry wanted me to use the power for good." Mama Eno placed a wrinkled hand over Kemi's. "Power can cleanse or corrupt. Remember your roots. Remember the lessons in humility. That is your shield." They spoke for hours, the warm breeze carrying the fragrance of freshly tilled earth. When Kemi emerged, she felt a renewed sense of clarity. She would fight, yes, but she would not become a monster. Her goal was not to ruin the Lawson family, but to claim her rightful place and uphold the values Henry instilled in her. She and Femi left the village, both feeling a deeper resolve. The path ahead might be treacherous, but Kemi's convictions had been fortified by the peace she found in her past. Returning to the city, Kemi discovered she had been booked, without her consent, to attend a high-profile gala organized by the Lawsons. It was billed as a charity event, but beneath the veneer of goodwill lay an undercurrent of corporate networking and power flaunting. Kemi arrived alone, wearing a stunning yet simple gown that drew appreciative stares from onlookers. She spotted Lady Angela near the stage, addressing the crowd with an air of regal authority. Derek stood by his mother, looking uneasy. As the night wore on, Lady Angela called for everyone's attention. A hush fell over the room. In a bold, dramatic move, Angela began speaking about changes in the Lawson family. She threw in phrases like moving forward, protecting the family name, and embracing new beginnings. Kemi's heart pounded. Something was off. Then came the bombshell. Angela publicly announced that Derek would soon be free from entanglements, hinting heavily at an imminent divorce from Kemi. The audience gasped, and murmurs rippled across the ballroom. Derek, turning pale, merely nodded in forced agreement. Kemi froze. She felt every eye in the room pivot to her. Lady Angela locked eyes with her, a triumphant smirk twisting her lips. The humiliating hush stifled Kemi like a suffocating blanket. She took a few measured steps forward, each one a testament to the composure she clung to so tightly. But she did not speak. Instead, she calmly turned and walked out. The crowd, stunned, parted to let her pass. Derek made no move to stop her. By the time Kemi reached the exit, tears threatened to spill, but her face remained stoic. She heard whispers follow her. "Poor girl. Did you see how Angela humiliated her? This is such a scandal." Yet behind the veil of her tears, a quiet fury smoldered. The Lawsons had played their hand in the most public manner possible. Now it was her turn. That night, as Kemi sat in her small home office, she received an urgent call from Maya. The lawyer's voice rang with excitement. "Kemi, check the news. It's happening." Kemi quickly opened her laptop and saw the headlines, "Lawson Global shaken by new majority stakeholder." Financial analysts were buzzing, speculating about an unknown entity that had just purchased a massive chunk of shares, effectively controlling the company. It was, of course, Kemi through Greyfield's network of shell corporations. She had pulled the trigger on the acquisitions as soon as Angela publicly embarrassed her. While the Lawsons partied, Kemi was quietly finalizing transactions that would rock their empire to its core. Social media caught fire with the rumor that the mysterious buyer might be a foreign billionaire or a rival conglomerate. No one suspected that the timid, mocked wife of Derek Lawson was orchestrating the coup. Derek called her phone repeatedly, but she let it ring. Chief Lawson tried to leave messages demanding answers, but she ignored those as well. She was not ready to talk. She needed them to stew in confusion, to feel the tremors under their feet, with no clue as to who was behind it. The city's financial district went into overdrive, with analysts drawing charts to determine how this acquisition could have happened so swiftly. The Lawson family, famed for its control, was suddenly at the mercy of a silent partner. Kemi felt a wave of vindication and sadness mixed together. This was never her ideal path, but she refused to remain a victim. In the stillness of her apartment, she closed her eyes and listened to her thudding heartbeat. The silent explosion had commenced. Soon, the ashes would settle, and she would be the one standing at the epicenter with the truth in hand. The following Monday, Kemi marched into the Lawson Global boardroom with an air of quiet authority. Executives, who had once seen her as little more than an afterthought, stared in stunned silence. News of the mysterious takeover was still reverberating, and speculation was rampant. They didn't know she was behind it, yet. Chief Lawson sat at the head of the table, face stormy, while Lady Angela tried to maintain her poise. Derek sat to his father's right, looking pale and anxious. The tension was so thick it seemed to distort the air. Kemi set her handbag down and calmly took a seat, this time right next to Chief Lawson, uninvited but unchallenged. "Good morning," she said, her tone firm. "Shall we get started?" The board members exchanged nervous glances. Finally, the CFO cleared his throat. We are here to discuss the recent transfer of controlling shares." Kemi nodded. "Indeed. You must be curious as to the identity of the new majority stakeholder." She let the silence linger, watching them squirm. Chief Lawson glared. "We will find out who it is and negotiate. Lawson Global remains a family enterprise." Kemi leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "I'm afraid it's too late for negotiations. The shareholder is here." Gasps. Murmurs. Derek leaned forward in his seat, appearing confused. Lady Angela's eyes widened in shock. Chief Lawson stiffened, his knuckles whitening. Kemi reached into her bag and pulled out the official documents. "I am that shareholder, courtesy of Greyfield Tech. I've just consolidated the final shares. I hold controlling interest in Lawson Global." A shocked silence. She felt her heart pound wildly but kept her expression stoic. Chief Lawson sputtered in disbelief, while Angela's face turned ghostly pale. Derek stared at her, his mouth slightly open, unable to form words. "Effective immediately," Kemi continued, addressing the entire board, "your positions are subject to my oversight." She turned to Lady Angela and Chief Lawson. "And that includes you both." The executives began speaking over each other in alarm. It was chaos, a corporate meltdown. Kemi exhaled, letting the turmoil wash over her. This was her moment, and she would not be bullied into backing down. Her mind flickered to every insult and belittlement she had endured. She was no longer their quiet victim. She was the one holding the reins. The boardroom was in uproar, but for the first time in her life, Kemi felt perfectly in control. The pandemonium in the boardroom began to subside, replaced by an uneasy hush as Kemi clicked a button on her phone. A projector on the wall lit up, showing security camera footage Kemi had captured. It displayed scenes of Derek, Lady Angela, and Chief Lawson plotting behind closed doors to remove Kemi as a threat and push for a divorce. Their voices were crystal clear in the recordings. Lady Angela's mouth dropped open. "How dare you record private conversations?" Kemi kept her eyes forward, letting the scene play. It showed Derek nodding in agreement when his parents outlined the plan to bribe him in return for discarding Kemi. Even the mention of forging documents could be heard. Derek buried his face in his hands. "Kemi, She turned off the projector, glancing from one stunned face to the next. "I gave you the chance to stand by me, Derek. You chose your parents' money. You chose your friends' acceptance. But every step of the way, I have proof." Chief Lawson bellowed, "You can't do this. This footage was obtained illegally." Kemi's calm expression remained intact. "Perhaps. But that's not relevant now. The real question is, do you deny it?" She surveyed them. None of them could muster a denial. Lady Angela, cheeks flushed with anger, tried to speak. "You ungrateful." Kemi raised a hand. "Spare me the insults. I tolerated them long enough." She turned to the rest of the board. "You've seen what this family is willing to do to protect their name, even at the cost of truth and decency." The board members looked uneasy, some shifting in their seats, others fixing their gazes on their polished shoes. Kemi could sense the wave of fear rolling through them. Fear that the entire empire could be taken away if they opposed her. She ended with a final pronouncement. "I am not here to destroy Lawson Global. But the corruption, the scheming, and the cruelty end today. I have the power to back up those words. You've seen the proof." Derek raised his eyes, shimmering with tears. But Kemi did not offer him a shred of sympathy. She had discovered the depth of his betrayal and saw no reason to comfort him. In that moment, the entire Lawson family stood exposed, unmasked for their greed and hypocrisy. With the board meeting in chaos and the evidence publicly revealed, Kemi strode out into the hallway. The shock waves still echoed behind her. Femi trailed close by, offering silent support. Suddenly, Derek burst through the doors, breathless. "Kemi, please wait," he called out, desperation thick in his voice. She paused but did not turn around. "Why?" "So you can explain how you decided my worth was less than your parents' approval." He gently touched her shoulder. "I was pressured, manipulated. You have to understand, my parents." Kemi spun to face him, eyes fierce. "Your parents didn't force you to take that payout. You could have stood up for me. But you didn't. Do you have any idea how that feels?" He bowed his head, tears escaping his eyes. "I know I failed you. I see that now. I thought, maybe we could fix this." She let out a quiet laugh, tinged with sorrow. "Fix what? My heart, that you broke? My trust, that you squandered? No, Derek. That's all gone." She opened her handbag and withdrew a set of divorce papers. She had brought them, fully signed and ready. "Consider this the final testament to what our marriage has become," she said, handing him the documents. He stared at them, tears streaming down his face. "You can't do this. Not now, not after everything we've been through." Kemi's voice trembled, but her resolve was unwavering. "I'm not the gullible village girl your family paints me to be. I have dignity. I deserve a partner who respects me." She gestured to the signed papers. "It's done." She turned and walked away, leaving Derek sobbing quietly in the corridor, clutching the divorce papers. There would be no redemption for him, not in her eyes. His tears could not undo the betrayal. Kemi's silent heartache burned within her, but she pressed forward, determined to finalize her ascension and purge the toxicity that plagued the Lawson empire. Later that afternoon, the board reconvened for an emergency session, still reeling from the earlier meltdown. Chief Lawson tried to assert control, only to be interrupted by Kemi's firm presence once more. Maya stood alongside Kemi, brandishing documents for all to see. As legal counsel to Ms. Kemi Okoye, she said, voice echoing in the silent room, I confirm that my client has acquired a majority stake in Lawson Global. She exercises full voting rights, effective immediately. The hush that followed was punctuated by a few stifled gasps. Kemi took a step forward, scanning the faces of the board members. I will appoint new leadership teams, evaluate current executives for integrity, and ensure the company's future is secure. Chief Lawson slammed his fist on the table. You can't waltz in here and just appoint new people. Kemi's steady gaze never wavered. Actually, I can. I now own the majority of Lawson Global. And if that's still unclear, I suggest you review the definition of majority shareholder. He glowered, but everyone in the room knew the truth. She held all the cards. For the first time in their storied dynasty, the Lawsons were at the mercy of someone they had humiliated and belittled. They had built an empire on arrogance, assuming they would always control it. Now, that empire belonged to Kemi. She pressed onward with her agenda. My aim is not to burn this place to the ground. We will work together, but only under principles of fairness and decency. Those who can't abide by that are free to resign. A weighty silence followed, as if the entire board recognized the significance of this turning point. No one dared to speak against her. Kemi felt an ironic sense of relief wash over her. She had never thirsted for power, but she would wield it to protect her dignity and honor the legacy of Henry Greyfield. The empire was in her hands, and she was determined to guide it with the moral compass that the Lawsons so sorely lacked. Kemi called a formal press conference to address the acquisition, a move that caught many off guard. Executives, reporters, and industry insiders gathered in the Lawson Global Auditorium, an imposing space usually reserved for triumphant corporate announcements. Cameras flashed as the murmuring crowd awaited her statement. To everyone's astonishment, Femi stepped up to the podium beside Kemi. He was no longer in his driver's uniform but wore a sharp business suit. The media recognized him instantly as Kemi's personal driver. Curiosity bristled through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Femi began, voice steady, allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Femi Okoye, not just Kemi's cousin but also her corporate consultant and strategic advisor. 4 years, I've served in the background, gathering information on the corporate dealings of Lawson Global. A wave of gasps rippled. He continued, I was tasked by Kemi's mentor, the late Henry Greyfield, to protect her interests and guide her when the time was right. That time is now. Kemi stepped forward, her eyes meeting the cameras. Some of you might wonder why I, someone with a humble background, now stand at the helm of this conglomerate. My inheritance from Henry Greyfield includes controlling stakes in key technologies and shareholding structures that power Lawson Global. Despite the humiliations I've faced, I have chosen to steer this company forward, not run it into the ground. Femi then read a letter from Henry Greyfield. Kemi, you have the heart of a servant leader and the mind of a pioneer. Should you ever face opposition from those who deem you unworthy, remember I believed in you. Use this gift to uplift others, as well as defend yourself. Emotions swelled in the auditorium. Kemi glanced at the assembled press, the board, and the employees. I own this company, yes, but I do so with the intent to reshape it into something better. My story is not about revenge, though it might look that way. It's about rightful ownership and transformation. The flashbulbs erupted once more. The world was discovering in real time that the once invisible wife of Derek Lawson was the legitimate heir to the fortunes of Henry Greyfield, and by extension, now the leader of Lawson Global. The driver was her ally, the village girl was the new boss, and the entire world watched, mouths agape at this unprecedented twist. In the days that followed, Kemi wasted no time implementing sweeping changes within Lawson Global. She established committees to audit corrupt practices, froze questionable accounts, and demanded accountability from every corner of the organization. Many executives resigned rather than face scrutiny. Others clamored to align themselves with the new leadership. In their place, Kemi promoted a mix of fresh faces and seasoned professionals with proven track records of integrity. Among them were 2 women from her hometown village who had excelled academically but lacked the social connections to break into corporate circles. Kemi decided that merit, not pedigree, would define the new era. The media devoured the story of the village girl turned mogul. Headlines bristled with intrigue, from rags to riches, the quiet wife who took over an empire, Greyfield's final gift. Yet Kemi maintained her humble demeanor throughout, focusing on the mammoth task of restructuring the corporation. Meanwhile, Chief Lawson and Lady Angela tried to contest her authority, filing lawsuits and claiming breach of trust. However, with Maya's legal prowess and the solid evidence of ownership, the cases quickly crumbled. Derek remained notably absent. Some said he had gone abroad to nurse his wounded pride. Others whispered he was still living in a Lawson-owned penthouse, too ashamed to show his face publicly. Kemi pushed thoughts of him aside. He had made his choices, and she had made hers. The transformation of Lawson Global was swift. Employee morale soared with the introduction of fair wages, transparent policies, and philanthropic initiatives aimed at bridging social gaps. Share prices stabilized, then surged, fueled by public goodwill toward Kemi's leadership style. For the first time, an undercurrent of optimism permeated the corporate halls. The empire that once crushed spirits to maintain profit was being reborn under Kemi's guiding hand. Henry Greyfield would have been proud. Amid the flurry of positive changes, a certain formal gathering was scheduled. Chief Lawson and Lady Angela requested a private audience with Kemi, ostensibly to offer their apologies. She agreed, out of courtesy, to meet them in the very same Lawson estate ballroom where she had once been humiliated. Dressed in a sleek black suit, Kemi arrived with her head held high. The memory of being mocked here still stung, but she was a different woman now, one who owned the space rather than bowed to it. Lady Angela approached first, her once icy demeanor now tinged with desperation. "Kemi," she began, voice trembling, "I realize I've been terribly unfair to you. Please, forgive us. We had no idea what you were truly capable of." Chief Lawson stood behind his wife, his face sullen. "We are a proud family, sometimes too proud for our own good. We may have made grave mistakes." Kemi listened, unmoved by their melodramatic performance. She recalled every sneer, every condescending remark, every ploy to destroy her. And yet, she felt no joy in their groveling, only a dull ache. She finally spoke, voice firm but devoid of malice. "Your apologies might be sincere, but I can't forget what you did, what you tried to do. You sought to strip me of my dignity, my marriage, and even frame me for debts I never incurred. That's more than a misunderstanding." Lady Angela lowered her gaze. We just wanted to protect Derek and the family name." Kemi exhaled slowly. "I have no intention of seeking further revenge. But understand this, the Lawson family holds no power over me anymore. You have apologized, but the damage is done." Chief Lawson stepped forward, genuine regret etched in his eyes. "We understand if you never want to see us again, but know that we truly regret our actions." Kemi offered a brief nod. That was the only acknowledgement she would give. Without another word, she turned and left, her footsteps echoing in the silent ballroom. Their apologies were little more than ashes of a burned bridge. She would not waste her time sifting through them in search of what could have been. Having set Lawson Global on a new course, Kemi decided it was time to celebrate with the people who mattered most, her extended family and close friends in her grandmother's village. She arranged a grand feast, inviting her new staff and partners to join. On a balmy weekend morning, a convoy of vehicles headed out of the city and into the countryside. Initially, many of Kemi's urban colleagues appeared apprehensive about traveling so far off the beaten path. But as they arrived, they were greeted by warm smiles, vibrant music, and the mouth-watering aroma of homemade delicacies. Rows of tables were set up under large canopies. Local drummers played infectious rhythms, and children ran around laughing. The village elders, dressed in colorful attire, welcomed Kemi with blessings and prayers. Her new corporate allies were awed by the sense of community. Many admitted it was their first time seeing life outside the glittering city. They mingled with villagers, sharing stories, dancing, and enjoying the sweet palm wine. Kemi moved among the guests, a radiant smile on her face. She felt more at home here than she ever had at a Lawson family function. This was her world, one built on shared respect and collective joy. Femi and Maya laughed as they introduced corporate executives to traditional dances, while local women proudly explained village customs. In the late afternoon, Kemi stood atop a small platform to address the crowd. "Thank you for honoring me with your presence. Today, we celebrate unity, humility, and the beautiful blend of old and new. My heart is full knowing we can bridge worlds together." A roar of applause greeted her words. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a bonfire crackled to life, and the feast continued late into the night. Kemi looked around at the smiling faces and realized this was the life she always wanted, one where compassion, respect, and opportunity thrived. It was a true celebration of the journey she had taken, from the village that raised her to the global stage she now commanded. Back in the city, Kemi's meteoric rise made her a media sensation. Interview requests, magazine covers, and television appearances poured in. People were enamored with her rags-to-riches story, hailing her as the newest icon of female empowerment. Despite the allure, Kemi politely declined most offers. She refused to let fame consume her. For her, the greatest achievement was not glamour but genuine impact on people's lives. She remained steadfast in her decision to keep working quietly behind the scenes, implementing corporate policies that promoted fairness and opportunity. When a prestigious business magazine tried to stage a photo shoot featuring her dripping in diamonds and designer outfits, she gently refused. "Thank you for the honor," she told the editor, "but I'd rather present myself in a way that feels true to who I am. I won't wear symbols of status just to feed a headline." The editor balked, warning her that such humility might dull her star power. Kemi only smiled. "Then let it dull. My worth isn't measured in sparkles." Her words spread on social media, igniting a broader conversation about what it meant to be a woman in power. Some praised her authenticity, while others criticized her for not using her platform to push more aggressively. Yet Kemi remained unflappable. She had learned that success meant different things to different people, and she would not compromise her values to fit anyone's narrative. She navigated each day with quiet grace, conducting board meetings, finalizing philanthropic ventures, and expanding opportunities for marginalized communities. She was the queen of an empire, yet she wore no crown. And in that simplicity, she found a deeper resonance with those who had once underestimated her. The skyscraper that once displayed the name Lawson Global now bore a new sign, Okoye Innovations Global. Workers had replaced the letters overnight, unveiling the shift in ownership to the city at large. Kemi had resisted renaming the company at first, but after careful thought, she decided that a fresh start was necessary to symbolize its transformation. Early in the morning, she arrived at the building alone, walking through the polished lobby. Heads turned, and staff greeted her politely, their gazes full of admiration rather than fear. She took an elevator to the top floor, her floor, where rows of glass offices overlooked the sprawling cityscape. In the corner office, there was no grand nameplate or ostentatious decor. Instead, Kemi's desk held a few family photos, her laptop, and a small framed picture of Henry Grayfield, smiling in one of their old mentoring sessions. She stepped out onto the balcony, letting the morning breeze caress her face. The city stretched before her, a testament to the heights she had reached and the humble roots she refused to forget. A sense of quiet fulfillment enveloped her. She had broken free from a toxic marriage, claimed the empire that was rightfully hers, and ushered it into a more humane and inclusive era. Despite the emotional bruises left by betrayal, she had not allowed bitterness to rule her decisions. As she stood there, a gentle smile curved her lips. She thought of her grandmother, of Henry Grayfield, of the village that danced in celebration, and of the many who had walked alongside her in faith. The reflection in the glass door showed a composed, confident woman who had taken the reins of her destiny. In that final frame, Kemi Okoye stood tall, her journey from an underestimated village girl to the owner of an empire complete. She gazed at the shimmering skyline, her eyes reflecting hope, resilience, and a promise. To always forge a path that others could follow, turning cruelty into compassion and adversity into triumph. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story.